Hi everyone, good afternoon from Vienna. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Making It in Austria. My name is Abigail, and today I have a great pleasure to introduce you to our next guest. And I'm very, very excited about to hear her story, Abbie Somma. Abbie, welcome to our show.
Thank you so much, Adela. I'm very happy to be here.
I'm really, really happy to have you. We haven't seen each other like face to face for some time. We follow each other on a social media, and I'm really looking forward to hear your story, to get to know how you end up in Vienna. What is so special about Vienna, and what do you do? So let's start with a short introduction from your side. What would you like to share with us?
Well, my name is Abbie, Abigail Somma, but I go by Abbie, and I've been living in Vienna now for the past 4 years. Before this, I was in New York City and for many years, maybe about 12 years, and was working in the international sphere, international policy. And I decided after I arrived in Vienna to switch to do something that felt more aligned with what I cared about and more purposeful to me. And so now I'm training companies and coaching individuals on mindfulness and reaching goals and things like that. Yeah.
So you and I met when you gave a workshop at the PWN Vienna here, and it was part of this search inside yourself. Yeah, is it concept or method
Workshop. Yeah.
workshop? Maybe you want to share with us what is that about? So are you still in using that kind of workshop? So what is that all about?
So, yeah, I got my certification to teach Search Inside Yourself in 2017. And that's a program that was founded at Google in about 2007. And at Google, they've had a long-standing policy, or they had at least, where 80% of your time was dedicated to your job and 20% of your time would be toward a personal project, something that you wanted to innovate. So a group of people got together and created this program, a 2-day workshop rooted in mindfulness and emotional intelligence. And eventually it got rolled out to Google staff, and it was really successful. And there was a long waiting list. People kept wanting to take it. And then they eventually became their own nonprofit called the Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute. And now Search Inside Yourself is a global program that's taught in 50 countries around the world. I'm still teaching it. There's a number of other teachers here in Austria. And so yeah, it's a nice program.
It is. So it was my first intro into the world of mindfulness. For me, it was, very, very, very beneficial. I remember it was just before my summer holidays, and I wasn't that relaxed during summer holidays for a very, very long time, thanks to a couple of hours that I stayed during your workshop. It helped me really to kind of rewind and to be present during summer holidays. So for me, it was like big plus.
Yeah. I mean, it's for many people, it introduces the concept of mindfulness. For others, they're already practitioners, and it's sort of things that they've already done before. But the other thing I think I would say about it is that in the company setting, and this is something that you and I were just speaking about, it creates a platform to have more meaningful conversations
Mm.
and to connect with your colleagues in a way that's a little bit more human, than just getting stuff done at the office. And so I think that's also why it really resonates with people, because you feel you really feel that you're having a shared experience with your
Mm.
colleagues, and that you're connecting with them and having conversations with them at a level that maybe you haven't had before. So
Absolutely. So what would you say, Amy, how mindful we are? How mindful have we been before the pandemic, and how mindful and how many meaningful conversations do we actually have? So what do you see has been changed during this pandemic?
yeah, I mean it's a big question, but I definitely see a shift happening where more and more people are looking for ways to manage their challenges. New challenges came up, a lot of new
Mm.
challenges came up. And some things we just realized they just weren't sustainable. Our ways of living weren't helping us to thrive. And so more and more people started opening themselves up in ways to things that they wouldn't have been open to before. And so maybe there's still a long way to go. Maybe some people haven't reached that place yet.
Mm.
But for example, when I was in New York, I wanted to do a workshop in person before the pandemic. It was right before the pandemic. And I think something like 6 people signed up. And then we had to cancel it because of the pandemic.
Mm.
And we put it online 2 months later, and it was like 30 people. And so almost instantly, people began to realize, okay, well, first of all, they're home. They have more time, but they need new ways to connect to people. And they need new tools to build emotional resilience. And so in the last year, you've seen all these courses cropping up, all these things about resilience, because we have had a lot thrown at us.
Mm.
And are looking for ways to, oh, how do I become more resilient? How do I bounce back from all this? How do I keep my head above water when it feels like, I might sink?
Mm.
So
Before we move to the story about Austria and you coming here, I have one more follow-up question about this, and it's: do you see, for instance, any difference, like in the US, how this mindfulness, mental health, resilience is being treated, or in Europe? Do you see any cultural differences, or is it more or less the same around the globe?
definitely before the pandemic, I mean, things felt more open to me in the US
Mhm.
or the UK, for example. And I can't really speak to too many other places besides the US, the UK, and Austria. But I think when I first arrived, and I think a lot of people who practice mindfulness or teach mindfulness, when I first arrived, and I would tell people here that I'm training companies in mindfulness, I think there was a little bit of like a question mark, like, what is that? And I would feel like, how do I explain it? And I remember with my partner, we would go over, like, I would try to practice like ways to like explain what I was doing, and it just didn't feel like it was resonating. And then recently, in the past few weeks, somebody approached me about offering sessions to people based in Vienna. And so we put something on a Facebook group, and over 30 people registered for it. And I think I was surprised. I honestly expected 10. And so it was really triple what I thought. And so uh, I think that space is opening up around the world now, more and more
Mm.
increasingly. Yeah,
Mm.
it's very cool.
Yeah, so I see that as well in my circle, that more and more people are being open about this topic, sharing it with the others on social media and talking about it, joining different sessions as you said yourself. So it's a way we're in a good direction. So we are heading to a good way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So now about your way to Austria, to Vienna. How did you end up from New York, that great magical place, concrete jungle, and Vienna?
Well, so my partner and I, we had twins in 2014, and we were both working at the UN at the time, and we tried to make our lives work in New York for about 2 years, a little bit. Yeah, it was just about 2 years. And eventually it just became too hard to keep two full-time jobs and have two small kids and not have help. And family in the US is got its childcare challenges, and it doesn't
Mm.
have the same social services. And finally it felt like our lives reached a head where we just like, it reached a point where we just felt like we had to go. And we came abruptly. We didn't plan on staying. We came with just a 3 month timeline. Let's just see what happens. And I feel like this has happened to other people I know here. They come for 3 months, and then, or other immigrants around the
Yeah.
world. And then suddenly they're like, okay, I've been here 4 years. And so, yeah, so that's sort of how we arrived. And I worked something out with my office in New York that I could telecommute here for the first year, 3 days a week. And that's what I did, telecommuted back to New York.
So would you say that your settling here in Vienna was pretty straightforward, easy, or you confronted some of the challenges, or you were surprised with some of the, I don't know, cultural differences here in Austria?
I try not to say it was horrible, but it felt horrible. It really felt horrible when I arrived, and that's because I think that I didn't know any German at all. I had so much resistance about this feeling that I was being forced to move, and it was kind of just like I had no choice but to surrender. And I think that when you're arriving with two small children in a foreign country and a foreign culture, the first year was just positively overwhelming,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, and really in the back of my head, like, how long is this going to be, and am I going to get back? And I think it took me a full year till I realized, okay, you're here now,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to make your life work, and whatever happens in the future happens in the future. I mean, this is really the mindful approach, but to really start to make the most of each day again, because I was out of that space for a long time, and I needed to get back there.
Mm. So from 3 months to 4 years,
Yeah.
and counting.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Yeah.
Abby, so I mentioned at the beginning that we met through the PWN Vienna, so one of the international communities for experts, business professionals. Where else do you meet interesting people? So how important are networks in general for someone when moving abroad?
So when I decided that I would leave the UN and that I would try to start my own venture, that's when I joined PWN, and
Mhm.
I wanted to get a mentor, and I wanted to have that experience, and it was a really good first step. I think that the other network I joined was the Vienna Families Network. And that's also important for parents to, I think, be networked with other parents, because you are going through unique challenges together. And you will discover this soon, but the kindergarten is an amazing network. You kind of can't escape these people because your kids want to play with them and their kids want to play with your. So that's sort of like an ingrown network, is the kindergarten. And so, somehow between all of that, suddenly it felt like, okay, like it's full. So I feel like I met a lot of people that way. And the other thing is sometimes, people will say, my friend just moved to Vienna, do you want to meet them? And
Yeah.
little things like that. And so I like your approach to networking. And I think that in general, you say yes to these opportunities because they're just a chance to meet somebody, and maybe plant a seed that sprouts down the line, or that you run into somebody again, and maybe it can just be a really nice connection. And so a lot of it happens sort of organically.
Mm. Um, then the follow-up question for people who are watching this now and considering to move abroad, or specifically considering to move to Austria. So would you have any advices how they can prepare in a best way possible? Specifically, for instance, if you have kids, if you're coming with the kids, it's a definitely different story than when we came here, my husband and I, without the kids, definitely different story. So what would you recommend to those parents watching this and saying yes to Austria?
Well, Austria is so great for parents in so many ways because of the social services it offers. And so, um, you know, the first thing I think that you would do as a parent is try to, find the right child care situation, and then also to join these Facebook groups, because there
Mhm.
are a lot of really good ones, for. I mean, some of the ones I'm in are English-speaking parents. The Vienna
Mm.
Families Network is a really solid base. The Vienna Families Network, they actually have a group for each district. So, and they have a group for twins, which I have. They have a group for special needs kids. So there are all sorts. So really, it's that idea of being able to connect with people who are in a shared experience, I think is really valuable. And then Vienna is such an expat rich city
Mm.
that you can sometimes meet them at the playground. You can, there's a lot of outlets. I think that my situation was also, arriving here without any German.
Mhm.
And a lot of people, particularly my dad, would be like, why haven't you learned German yet? Why haven't you learned German? I actually do not think that, for an overwhelmed parent, that needs to be the priority. I think that,
Mm.
you you have time for that. And there are ways to make your way around with a little bit of German and not overwhelming yourself with something new,
Mm.
because I think you're already extremely overwhelmed. And that's how I felt. And this is something that when the space opens up, I could turn my attention to, but I just couldn't do it during the first years. Yeah. And unfortunately, I didn't really have to. As my kids get older, I start to learn just by hearing them talk.
They pick up so fast, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And my father is German speaking, so we're listening to all of them. That's it. Yeah.
Instead of the TV, usually they say when you move to, to learn the language faster, so you have the TV on or have the radio on, so you have kids and, and your husband, so
Yeah.
live show.
I'm sure.
Abbie, would you like to share with us a couple of tips on how to go mindfully throughout the day?
How to go mindfully throughout the day. Um, well, so I think that it's useful to just give a quick definition of mindfulness.
Hmm.
Yeah, so mindfulness really, in short version, is about being present and about having a greater sense of awareness of what's happening in the present moment. So we say that it's an awareness of the mind and the body and the surroundings with an attitude of kindness and curiosity. So it's trying to sort of quiet that chatter that's constantly going on in our heads to be more engaged in what's really happening right in the moment. As for tips, I think that using the breath, focusing attention on the breath, and sometimes it really helps to take long, slow breaths in, 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out. And then when I need to, I actually do 5 seconds in, hold for 5 seconds,
Yeah.
out for 5 seconds, hold for 5 seconds. This activates the parasympathetic nervous system, so it calms us down a bit, and it also helps to ground us in the present moment. And so this can be something useful, before a podcast or a call or a transition or things like that. So I think that remembering to focus on your breath, and you can use these kind of short micro practices when you catch yourself wandering off in attention, like repeating a story that happened that upset you about a conversation with a colleague, and you notice that is replaying and replaying, and you just ground yourself by focusing on your breath and returning to the moment. Okay, where am I right now? What's right in front of me? And that actually builds a muscle of yeah.
Mm.
Another thing that I would recommend, because I do this myself,
Mhm.
is I do a gratitude practice at night, to sort of help keep my brain on what is going right in my life when it's so easy for the brain to remind us what's not going right. You can write it down in a journal, 5 things that happened right during the day, 3 or 5. But a lot of times I don't feel like writing as I get into bed. So I just review it. I scan through it in my day. Okay, what went right today? What worked? You can also do that in the morning. So those are two of the things that I think are really
Yeah.
important. Yeah.
Yeah. Love it. And I, the more I read about it, and I read in Brené Brown's, I think one of her books as well, that it's always coming to this very, simple. They sound very simple. So these tips, so they focus on breathing, journaling, gratitude, but somehow, during throughout the day we forget about this. It's easier to forget about it.
Well, and it's important to remember that the inner voice that we think of as I tends to be a very critical inner voice, and tends to like to repeat things a lot, and takes away our happiness. So it sounds simple, but it's
Yeah.
not, because it requires a lot of repetition
Yeah.
to sort of distance ourselves from that and to give ourselves more freedom in our lives. So it's a paradox of being simple and not simple. Yeah.
Thank you, Abbie, for sharing. Um, before we wrap up, I would like to ask you, what are you reading at the moment? Or listening, maybe, about meditation, anything like that.
Yeah, I read a lot of mindful parenting books. I have a lot of those that I'm sort of picking up here and there. I just read a book called The Surrender Experiment by a teacher called Michael Singer. He also wrote The Untethered Soul, and The Untethered Soul is really about that chattering voice inside the head and how to create that space and distance. So yeah, that's what I'm reading.
Oh, is it just for the parents, or is it as
Oh,
well
no, no,
for?
no. The
Oh,
Surrender
no.
Experiment and the Untethered Soul are the Untethered Soul is, I would say, yeah, a well-known book in the genre of mindfulness.
Mhm.
And Surrender Experiment is more of his autobiography about how certain things came to be in his life. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then listening to, yeah, I don't know, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but
And about this, about parenting, mindful parenting, any book that you would like to recommend? For me, for instance, the one who is expecting a baby.
Yes. So, and some of these things I've read, and then they'll come back to you at different points in your life, and they'll be useful in different ways. But The Whole Brain Child by Daniel Siegel
Mhm.
is a good one. There's another classic called Between Parent and Child, but the more modern version of that is called How to Talk to Your Kids So Your Kids Will Listen, and How to Listen So Your Kids Will Talk. And I'm actually going to buy that one right now because I have Between Parent and Child, but I know that sort of the two of his students wrote this book that I hear about all the time, how to talk to your child so your child will listen and listen to your child. I don't know, anyway, you get the idea.
Yeah.
Listen so your child will talk. Yeah. So yeah, I think those are good.
Yeah, great. I noted it down, and I will as well link it in our YouTube description for people who want to check it out. And I will as well share your contact details in our YouTube description so that people can get in touch with you. They can follow your work. I know that you have preparing some workshops, right? And some.
Yeah, I mean the best thing probably, I mean, I'm on social media, but the best thing is probably to sign up to my newsletter.
Yeah.
Because yeah, if there's anything new coming out, then I would announce it there.
Perfect. So then I will add that as well. Thank you, Abbie, so much for being our guest and having this mindful conversation and this beautiful interview. I really, really enjoyed. I feel way better, way calm and more present. So, and I hope that people who listen to this, they will have the same feeling. So after this, after listening to you, yeah.
Well, thank you so much. It was really a pleasure to be here and to chat with you and to see you again. So
Yeah.
thanks a lot.
Thank you. And thank you all for watching. So if you like the content, please, comment, like, subscribe. Every week we bring new exciting guests who made it in Austria. And if you have someone that you would like to recommend to us, please do so. Write me in on LinkedIn or write me on a YouTube channel. I would love to hear from you. Thank you, Abbie. Have a great day, and we talk soon.